Hello again, guys. Welcome and thanks again for joining me. Mike here. Today I'm going to build one of these niches. A lot of times you'll see these things in like showers where they'll have a little cutout, they'll put some fancy tile, you can put your shampoo here, you can put your soap, whatever. I like to put these things in right where you come in from the back door, from the garage. It's just a great place to hang your keys, put your sunglasses, outgoing mail, or whatever else you want on there. Okay, before I get started, I want to show you something here. Most houses are built with what they call 16-inch on-center stud placement. So what you would end up in the middle of the two is 14.5 inches. And that's exactly what we have with this one. Now, I build mine a little bit less than that because if you have a stud that's off placement a little bit, it can be a problem trying to get the niche in once you get it finished. So the number I use is about 14.25. And also the studs are typically 3.5 inches deep. So let's just say that this is the wall on the other side of the room. This is the side you're going to put the niche in. You have 3.5 inches to deal with here. And then typically most people have 1/2 inch sheetrock over top of this. So what you're left with is 4 inches. And again, that's exactly the process I used with this one when it comes to the spacing. So you don't want to build your niche any deeper than 4 inches. I always err on the side of making sure that the thing is going to fit. So I always build mine at about 3 7/8. That way I know that it's not going to interfere with anything on the back. So with this one, we were actually under new construction with this house, so all the framing and everything was exposed. So I could kind of tweak the position of this a little bit, put it exactly where I wanted. If you don't have that luxury and you're actually trying to put one in where drywall is, really all you have to do is just make sure that you do find studs and then make sure that's the place where you want to put yours. Okay, so here's what I've got so far. I did some wood cutting. I didn't glue it or I didn't nail it yet, so I'll get to that in a minute. But what I wanted to do is just show you what it looks like to start with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it apart now and then explain to you the different sizes that I chose. Okay, so I decided to make mine 14.1/8 wide. So you typically have, like I said, 14.5 inches between the studs, but I always err on the side of making it a little bit smaller so I don't run into any problems. So this backboard right here that I'm going to put on the back, that one is cut at 14.1/8. And now one thing with the backboard is the thinner you can get on that, the better it is, because that way you gain a little bit more room on the inside of the niche. Okay, so what I did was I ripped this top board and the two side boards at 3.5 inches, and I do have a 1/4 inch board, 1/4 inch thick board for the back. So that gives me 3 3/4 inches total. Like I said, what you have is about 4 inches depth in the stud. So we're going to be about a 1/4 inch shy, which will ensure that this is going to fit in there no problem. Okay, so the length I chose for these side boards is 25.25. So this bottom board I did a little bit different. This board I've got cut at 4 3/4. So what's that telling me? It's going to stick out from the wall a little bit, which is not a problem because I like the looks of that a little bit better. What you're going to see here is these little wings right here, and these little wings will actually extend over the sheetrock, and it'll just give it a little bit more detail at the end. So it's come together pretty good. It's all glued and nailed together. I always recommend gluing. What I also did, Brenda always likes to have a shelf. So I actually did end up making a little shelf. I'm not going to fasten it in place right now because I'm not exactly sure if she wants it lower or higher. So we'll just deal with that later. So I'm not done with this yet, but I've just got it sitting here in place. Now I'm going to explain what else you have to do. Okay, so you've got the sheetrock cut back. And this is in place. What you're going to end up with is a seam right there. Nobody wants to see that. So now you just pick your favorite trim. So pick something that's wider than 3/4 inch. So what you can do then is flush it up with this edge and then make sure it extends over the sheetrock. And then that's what's going to cover that cut end of the sheetrock. Okay, so I was just looking around at some of my scrap wood I had, and I ended up running across this chair rail, and I think it's going to be perfect to frame the outside of this thing with. So what I did was I ended up cutting the boards already. I've got a miter on this one, so this will be the top one, and then I do have this side one over here. So that's kind of the program. Now, this isn't something you have to do. What you do have to do, though, is you have to make sure whatever you trim this edge with, it extends farther than this, like I said earlier, because it has to cover that seam of the drywall. Okay, so after I do get it glued and nailed together, what my last little dilemma is going to be is the bottom. Because this bottom is going to sit on top of a brace that I have built within the 2x4s. But if you look closely when it's done, you'll still be able to see that seam right there. So I might end up trying to find some type of a small stock that I can actually fasten to the bottom of there that's going to cover that seam. Okay guys, so I got it all done. It turned out pretty darn good. So let me just explain to you, let me show you the back of this. I know I keep talking about that seam in the drywall to make sure you get it covered up. I just hate for you to get one of these things done and then find that it didn't cover the drywall. So number one, make sure when you cut out the opening for one of these that you get it fairly close. This is the back of it. So you can see this lip right here. It goes completely around the whole niche. On the bottom here, that's where I put that different piece of trim, and it's not quite as big. It doesn't matter because as long as it's going to cover that drywall seam, we're fine. On the side here, you can see that there's quite a bit of space. It's just because I happen to have this chair molding that I decided to use for this to trim it out in. So by having this trim all the way around, I'm good to go. I don't have any worries about it not covering that seam in the drywall. So all I have to do now is just make sure that I go around and fill all these nail holes and then sand it up good, get some good paint on there, and this project is going to be done and ready for installation. Okay, so to install it, it's really pretty simple. You've got your cutout right here. You had your stud on both sides, so this should slide right in that opening as you built it. You can see we've got the trim here. It covered up the side of the drywall perfectly. You can't see that seam, which is what we were going for. Hold it in place, put a couple tack nails on top, a couple on the bottom, a little wood filler in there, sand it up, one more coat of paint, and you're good to go. So project complete. Guys, give it a try if you want. It's not that difficult to build, and it really does come in handy when you enter the garage, place to hang your keys and items like that. So thanks again for joining me, guys, and we will catch you next time.